Hey everyone, my name is Kent C. Dodds, and I'm super excited to be joined by my friend Ben Elegbadu. Super jazzed, Utah jazzed, to be joined with my friend here. um, he just loves the jazz, so I like to
Oh,
throw that in there. Um,
oh,
yeah, so Ben and I have known each other for I don't remember when we first met. I think it was maybe at a React conference, maybe React rally. I'm not sure.
likely, yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe even before that. Oh, it was the conference that was in New Orleans.
Oh, yeah.
Uh,
Which one?
Jazz Con was that?
No, you know what? I've never been to a conference in New Orleans, but
Oh,
I do
so
feel
then
like
it was.
there
It's the
was.
same people, but it was in Atlanta.
Oh, yeah.
Yes,
Connect Tech. Yeah,
Connect Tech. There you
that's
go.
right.
That was it.
Yeah, so that's been like 4 years or something like
Yeah,
that, maybe longer.
definitely.
It's been a good time. I've enjoyed following you on Twitter and seeing
Likewise.
actually. So you post like tech stuff, but I enjoy watching the snippets of basketball plays and stuff
Okay,
that you post.
cool.
It's kind of fun. So yeah, anyway, why don't you introduce yourself to us and then we can get talking about how great the Utah Jazz are.
um, Not that part. But anyway, so my name is Ben Elegbadu. And the reason why Kent is talking about the Utah Jazz is that I'm originally from Houston. So I'm a Houston Rockets fan. And I detest the Utah Jazz. It's been 23 years. I went back, 1997, Western Conference Finals. John Stockton hits this shot to take us out of the finals to play the Bulls. And it's like, the Utah Jazz,
Oh.
apparently y'all call it the shot. I have other choice words for what it is. But anyway, not a Jazz fan, but Kent and other folks from Utah love to, you know, give me flack about that. So anyway, love
I actually
basketball.
I don't do like I don't follow basketball at all. I don't know who's on the team or
Yeah,
anything. I
you
like
just know.
I watch Tyler McGinnis poke fun at you, and so I
Yep,
I take my poke there too.
yep. You join in. It's okay. It's okay. But I love the last couple of years, the Rockets have knocked the Jazz out of the playoffs. So, it'll never replace the original, but it does make me a little happy. So yeah, I am a principal front end engineer at Stitch Fix. I joined. It's almost a year. It'll be a year in October, and I work on our front end platform team, our burgeoning front end platform team. So my responsibility is to help all of the other teams who are focused on building their applications, help them level up their experience with React, make it easier for them to build their React applications, and just, yeah, enable people to know more about React and the nitty gritty details so that when they are building their apps, they feel more confident that they're doing the right thing.
Cool. So do
So,
you build like tools and things for them to like so they don't have to worry about infrastructure related stuff
yeah,
and what?
yeah. So there's kind of two aspects of what I do. One aspect is the typical UI front end. So that's our design system. So that's one half. And the other half is the tooling aspect of it. So configuring Webpack or Babel or Jest or Prettier or ESLint, all of those things that uh, enable you to build a React app if you don't have Create React app, for instance, which we are not able to use at this point. So all of those things, all those toolings are both sides of kind of what I work on.
Yeah, that's precisely what I did at PayPal before I left. Like
Yeah.
exactly like I worked on PayPal scripts and PP React, and it was in retrospect, PP React is probably not a great name.
Yeah. Also like
But I didn't want to have to like type PayPal React every time I imported. But yeah.
gotcha.
But yeah, so that stuff was like huge impact
Yeah.
to the company. Like now everybody they tell me this now, like everybody at PayPal is using these tools, and it's just
Awesome.
enormous like velocity improvement. Is that like
Yep.
in your experience?
Yeah, exactly. So right now we are building, I guess, what would be PayPal scripts right now, a first version of it, because yeah, every team is configuring their Webpack, their Babel. They're all doing it differently, but not with a real purpose. It's just snapshot in time. This is how you did it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And what it makes it difficult for us if we're trying to update or add a new improvement to stuff. Well, everyone's different, so it may break this configuration versus that configuration. So we were trying, let's keep all the configurations the same, but then there's drift and things. So now, first pass, what we're doing is we're building a shared configuration library, essentially. So one JavaScript library or npm package that you import, that's versioned, of course, and then all of your configs inherit from our configs, basically. So in general, all of your configs are just going to be empty, just extends, whatever.
Yeah.
So that part is nice. Ideally, we'll get to the point where we'll have a CLI similar to PayPal scripts or React scripts, so that you can just run command lines and you don't even have to maintain a config at all. But this was the first pass to get towards there.
That's a good call, because it takes some time to get those scripts working. So if you can get the configs in place first, then people migrating, and here's the really cool thing is once you get your CLI, then like you can add ESLint and Prettier and Webpack as dependencies of your CLI, and now people add it, and that git diff in the package JSON is so great. It's like there go all those Babel plugins and all the ESLint config. Oh, it's all gone, and just this one little line of added this new dependency. It's so awesome.
Exactly. Yeah, so that's kind of where my passion has been lately, is in this kind of tooling space. I actually built my own CLI. I call it the Ben MVP CLI.
Nice.
And it's because I found myself, similar to your KCD scripts, I think is what it's called.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I found myself building all these different libraries, and same thing, having to upgrade, and I never go back to kind of fix the other ones.
Yeah.
Like my first library, I wrote it in ES5 because ES6 was just coming along. There was no Babel and everything. And to go back and to do all that stuff is like a pain. So creating my own library of sorts in TypeScript to do all these things was a huge learning. So like the way that I end up learning how Babel works, how Webpack works, ESLint, is struggling. And then not being able to figure out how it works, and then finally getting to it. And I'm like, okay, now I know these little pieces. And really all of those tools like Jest and ESLint, they assume that they're running in the host app, not in a library that does the app, that is doing it for you on your behalf. So they don't all have APIs that you can, or Node APIs that you can use. So yeah, it was fun.
Interesting. Yeah,
Lots of learning there.
Fascinating stuff. Like I learned a lot from React scripts, create React app stuff that patterned lots of PayPal scripts after what they did. And it's brilliant. Like once you have it in place, then upgrading all the dependencies. I just like every couple weeks I'll upgrade KCD scripts, all the dependencies of KCD scripts. And then, when I come into a project that hasn't been updated in a while, I'll just update the version of KCD scripts and I'm done. And it's so easy.
Yeah. And what was great about React scripts specifically is they went from Webpack 2 to 3, I believe, at one point, or 3 to 4, one major version of Webpack. And it ended up just being a patch of React scripts, because it was just like a bump, and then now you got all this greatness and all this improvement of Webpack. So they figured out all the hard work of Webpack and upgrading the major version. It just became a minor or patch even for us.
Yeah, it's amazing. It really is. And all of a sudden your app is faster, or your build is faster.
Exactly. Build times was great.
Fantastic stuff, man. So would you say that you're currently like most excited about the tooling and design systems? Like that's your corner of React that you're excited about right now?
Yeah. It's been a while since I've actually built apps and such. Like I will join teams and help them build little features here and there, but most of mine is enabling others to be awesome themselves. So the tooling side, as well as the design system side, because that's really key too. That is also a multiplier. If the team doesn't have to rebuild a modal or rebuild even a button, all of that stuff is on brand. It's configured to look like Stitch Fix, but they don't have to worry about it. They just have to go to the docs, configure it, and then there you go. they built
Mm-hmm.
it. So
Yeah.
it's
So
been great.
are you building on top of existing abstractions for like the modal and stuff like that? Are you wrapping things, or are you building everything from scratch?
Depends. So for the modal, yes, because that one is complicated from a accessibility standpoint,
Right. Yeah.
right?
What
So
are you
you have
using?
to trap. We're using Airbnb's modal, I
Hmm.
believe. I believe so. Because we have to trap focus. You know, if you're tabbing, you can't tab underneath the modal, for instance, and
Right.
it has to select the default interactive element by default and all these different things in order to support it. Clicking behind so it dismisses. Like there's a lot that people don't realize goes into a modal to make it
Yeah.
correct, at least.
Yeah. Thank you,
So we
web
didn't real build
platform.
that. Yeah. But other things, yeah, we build from scratch. But it actually is built on top of our style system, which is a SAS mixins layer.
Hmm.
Because before the component existed, before I got there, everything was in SAS, still is, but everything was in SAS. So they needed the ability outside of React to also make things look according to design. So the teams would write a button tag themselves in Rails or sometimes in React, but then write the CSS to call a mixin themselves. So that's the really nice thing, is that the design system for the most part is a UI only abstraction. Like something else handles the styling
Hmm.
itself, which really got me thinking about like what is a component library itself. Like, could I build a component library builder, right? Because
Yeah.
there's like
Yeah.
some fundamental, like everybody's building these things. They all have a button, they all have a modal, they all have a text input, but they all just want it to look different. Really, that's really
Hmm.
what the difference is. So could I
Yeah.
build something that's like looks like wireframes from a look and feel so that you could jump in and make it look the way you really want it to look, but it has all the functionality yourself so that you don't have to do that yourself. So like a starter kit or something for a component library.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's something I've been noodling around. Haven't had the time to do it, but yeah,
Yeah. It's
is
an
an idea
interesting,
that I
like,
have.
it's definitely a shared problem. And when you find shared problems, you're normally looking at a library, right? Or
Yep.
some tool.
Yeah. So my idea is that it's like a starter kit. So not something that you would continuously update, but something that kicks you off so that you can hit the ground running and have a
Hmm.
design system up in 2 weeks, instead of that has a lot of components, instead of waiting 2 months to really get it to be something that lots of teams can use.
Yeah, yeah, I know. So our design system, or at least the library that implemented the design system that I started as I was leaving,
Hmm.
it took a lot of meetings and things trying to figure out how we wanted to approach it. At first, I was like, we're only going to build this with React. Like, we're
Yeah.
not like, who cares about whatever else? You know, everybody's moving to React to PayPal, and I got a hard no on that one.
Yeah.
So it ended, like one of the biggest impetuses, or like the reason that I decided I wanted to solve this problem, was because I looked at our apps that I was supporting, and we had like 90% unused CSS even after you click around and open modals and stuff. And I was like,
Wow.
what are we gonna and the reason this happens is because you write the CSS and nobody wants to touch it, so they make
Nope.
a new version, right?
Yep.
And so I was like, we've got to be able to have some way to like, when you bring in the design system library, you don't bring in everything, just the stuff that you're bringing in, right? And
Hmm.
so we figured out a way to make it so that we could just modularize our CSS as like files. Like, here's the button file, and we'll
Yep.
just import that one.
Yep.
And that way, like, people who are doing it the old way can just bring in all the CSS, and that's just the life you live if you're
Yeah.
not using a component-based library. But then like all the new folks can just import the stuff that they care about, and it works out pretty nicely.
Yeah, exactly. And my plan with the design system, like, is that teams don't have to write CSS. Like, unless they're
Mm.
doing something, crazy special or whatever, it's like they can build their whole UI layouts and everything just with the component library. That's what
Yeah,
I consider a success. And we're
yeah,
getting there.
yeah. I'm really impressed by the stuff that Mark DeGlesh has been doing at
Hmm.
Seek. Like he's got a lot of
Yep.
interesting ideas there. I
Yeah, I
use
borrowed an idea from him from one of his talks, and it's the idea of a stack component or an inline component that's for the horizontal. So the stack
mm,
component just lets you separate things inside of the component by an equal number of spacing. So that
mm,
happens all the time where it's like, I need one rim in between these four different things. So
but not
right
one
there,
above or one below, right?
but not one above, not one below. So you end up writing interesting CSS selectors to solve that and things like that. So that I have a component that does that, and you can build layouts that way. The
Hmm.
same thing for the horizontal direction. So just using those two components, people can build really layouts that look appropriate and evenly spaced and things like that.
And
So
consistent throughout the app because you limit
exactly.
their choices to improve consistency, right?
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
So just those little things, like those two components have been huge and something that I've never thought about in a component library. I've always thought about the interactive or the visual, but this is, yeah, it's just
Like
something that,
layout components. Yeah, it's
yeah.
really interesting. Yeah, well, I kind of I initially started with the opinion that like everybody we're going to build our component library with CSS and JS with emotion, and we're
Hmm.
just export emotion styled component things. And then I eventually kind of decided, no, actually, it's better to have your component library be regular CSS.
Hmm.
Or really, it doesn't matter too much. But if you use regular CSS, then you can have a lot more flexibility,
Yep.
and other people can use it. And
Yep.
then for app code, I just say like, hopefully you don't need one-offs, but if you do, I just suggest CSS, like regular CSS or CSS and JS,
Hmm.
because you can mesh these together in a really nice way. And it's
Hmm.
CSS and JS gives you like determinism and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
exactly. Same with our component library. So it's written in SAS, but it's exported in CSS. So I actually
mm,
compile the SAS down to CSS because we have one side of the organization that uses CSS and JS, and we have another side of the organization that uses SAS. So I
mm,
want both of them to be able to use the component library. So Webpack, they're all using Webpack, and Webpack
yeah,
can always compile CSS or you import CSS. So now everybody has the opportunity to use it.
yeah.
It means
So
way more work for me and figuring out all those build tools, but then far less work for everybody else. So,
and that's the whole thing. Like that's
yep.
actually the interesting thing about when you get to a scale where people can specialize,
Hmm.
because then that's where the total becomes more than some of the parts, right? Because when
Yeah,
you can say, okay, so you focus on building the product and putting these pieces together, and I'll focus on building the pieces that you're going to use.
yeah,
And together we can do much more than if we were both focusing on the product or both focusing on the pieces, right?
exactly. Exactly. And that's what's happening. And it's the same thing in design as well. So I know for a while, designers have really balked at the idea of a design system for them because they don't feel like they have the freedom to come up with
Expressive
whatever is best
power.
for that thing. But
Yeah.
now, if they have the components in the design library to use, they can focus on solving the user experience problem for the
Mm.
actual page instead of having to literally make a rectangle to create a button. Like that's just
Yeah.
completely wasted time for them. So
Yeah,
just
seriously.
being
And
able to drop stuff is great.
yeah, yeah, totally. Now are your designers using like Sketch or Figma, or what are they all
Yeah.
using?
Yeah, we're using Figma. So the kind of counterparts to me in design on the design platform team maintain a Figma library of components. So most of them I've built in React, some of them not. And then now through, they're not called symbols, that's in Sketch, but there's some kind of concept of now in a team's actual Figma mockup, they can reference back to that component. So so if they go in and change the source component, it'll change in their designs, which is really
Mm.
nice. And I can double click or go to the source component from a design. It's like really cool how Figma is set up that way.
Yeah,
So
that's amazing.
they're
Uh,
able to see like what component it actually is and reference that back to the component library.
Nice, nice. And then so the design team exports all of their designs and hands this off to you, and then you go and implement that in CSS as well as like the interactive parts.
Yeah, the design library. Yeah, I can just see it and then go and figure that stuff out.
Yeah. Dude,
So that's one of my keys that I've been really harping on when I'm talking about design systems. So one, a design system isn't a physical thing. It's like an idea, a concept, brand guidelines. Then the design team creates a design library in Figma or Sketch. And what I always harp on is that the JavaScript component library, React in my case, has to come after the design library. Like, don't build anything that's not in the design library, because if that means that the design team hasn't agreed to whatever's in your component library, if you're just building abstractions out of what you see. And there's been too many times that I've done that in the past where I'm like, oh, well, this is kind of the same. Let me create some props to abstract that out. And bam, great. Now the developers don't have to worry about it. But then the designer comes and creates something slightly different. And they're like, well, we didn't agree to this abstraction that you just created in the source. And then there's friction and all that. So as long as it's in the design library, that means the designers have agreed to that, and they'll create designs in that system. And if they choose to create something outside of it, then they're telling the developer, hey, I want you to build something from scratch. I want you to spend 2 weeks instead of 2 hours. Like, that is what I am saying. So there's more clarity around that.
Yeah, absolutely. Now you also are doing teaching, like publicly, but internally as well. First, tell me about your internal stuff. What do you do? Because like it sounds like your job is developer velocity and productivity. So you've got the tooling, you've got design systems, and then I'm guessing that you're doing like instruction of some kind too.
Yeah. So it kind of happens at a macro level and a micro level. So at a micro level, I rotate between teams, like one team a month for a month, and I'm just on their team. So I'm going to the stand-ups, going to all of the sprint plannings, everything, engaged in it so that I can understand what's going on. And then I'm involved in, we pair on things to solve problems. I code review things, and that's like gives me the opportunity to, one, learn what they're doing so that the design system can be better and the tooling can be better, but then also try to impart my knowledge in certain cases when I give a review, like, oh, you know what? When you use state and the previous value is dependent on the new value is dependent on the previous value, you should use an updater function instead of not using one. Like, I can give reviews on that because I'm getting included in that, and then hopefully, and link to the docs that say it, and then hopefully learning happens that way. So that's one half of it on the micro side. And then on the macro side, I do what called React code clinics. So the code clinic is like once a month or so, where pick a topic and we'll just discuss that. So I've done one on use state, the hook, and then one on use effect, and we'll do a next one on use context. So we'll go through it, and I'll have some instruction or live coding that I do, examples similar to what I do in my workshops, and then there are exercises to do to apply what they've learned.
That's cool.
So kind of both aspects of it.
So, and then on outside of your company, you have these mini shops. You want to,
yeah,
like where'd the mini shop idea come from? Why do you?
Yeah.
Why are they mini?
Yeah. So, so I'm coming into the space. I know I wanted to teach. I wanted to try doing it on my own as opposed to working through a conference or whatever. Let's see how I could do it. And I'm in this space, and you're in this space, Tyler's in this space. There are a lot of people doing workshops, and I was like, well, how can I differentiate myself? Most of the workshops are 5 hours, 7 hours, full days and stuff like that. Well, what if, and I know for myself going into workshops that sometimes after lunch, like, I'm much better before lunch, after lunch. Let's just say that. Right. Yeah. So, well, let me target that, whoever those group of people are. Right. So that's the many parts. It's, get enough to understanding to, pique your interest, be able to start doing stuff. And once you know that part, then I think now blog posts and documentation, YouTube videos, you'll be able to understand those better because you have like that baseline.
Yeah, yeah.
So I call them mini shops because I wanted to brand something. So
It's great.
now,
Yeah,
now
it's a
when you
great
Google
brand.
mini shops, hopefully that starts becoming, you'll start finding my things. So
Yeah. So what are some of the things that you teach in the mini shops?
right. So I've got 4 right now. The most popular one is TypeScript for React developers. So
Yeah,
I
that
recently
makes
learned
sense.
TypeScript about a year ago, and with React. And so I teach TypeScript, but specifically geared towards React. I don't teach the totality of TypeScript because it's pretty complicated.
Yeah,
It's really
yeah,
awesome too.
that'd be mini shops.
Yes, exactly. So I think that's one of them that goes really well. There's a typical intro to React, but using hooks now, obviously. And I'll say that if the React team needed any indication that hooks were better than classes, is that teaching React with hooks is way easier than teaching it with class components. Like,
so amen,
way
brother.
easier. Yeah, I don't know what, but it just like people get it a lot quicker. It's much easier to explain. Yeah,
Yep.
it's awesome. So that's one. Then another one that actually came out of my time with Stitch Fix is migrating to React hooks from class components. So we have a
Nice.
lot of people who learned React with class components. They're like, this hooks thing, I'm not forced to use it right now. Should I use it? Like, what is this all about? It's kind of scary. People, I don't know, people have a sense of apprehension around it. So teaching that, showing like, oh, this is how set use state works versus set state. This is how component did mount, update, unmount works versus use effect. Those sorts of things. And then the last one, oh, go ahead. You go.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like you just said how much easier it is to teach hooks than classes, and I totally agree. And then I've also observed that people who learn classes first have a harder time learning hooks.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because they have to unlearn a bunch of class things.
Yep. Exactly. That's exactly it. And that's what a lot of the mini shop is about. It's like unlearning those, then learning this.
Right.
So
yeah.
it's funny that new people learning React pick it up so much easier than those moving over.
Yeah. So if anybody's listening and they're like, should I learn classes? Don't learn classes. Just learn hooks first, get comfortable with that, and then learn classes on an as needed basis.
Yeah. Because likely your code base is you're gonna see classes in there and such. So you're gonna want to know how they work. But yeah, learn hooks.
Yeah.
Then the last one, that it's a new one that I haven't done yet, is sharing in React components. So this is something that's come out of my design system work. Is like, it's basically around learning render props, composable components, and HOCs, like all of that kind of stuff. Like you have multiple components that want to do the same logic, but they want to look differently. Like, what are the different patterns you can use in order to kind of solve that problem?
Yeah. Awesome. And the mini shops are like 3 hours long. Is that the?
Yeah. So they're 3 hours long. They're in the morning for myself on the West Coast. So like 9 to 12 is usually when they are. And the advantage is that people in Europe, like in the London, France time zones, can also come because it's like 7 p.m. to 10 or 6 p.m. to 9 for them. So it kind of works
pretty
for
reasonable
them as well.
For them.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, sweet.
So
dude.
yeah, if you go to my website, I'm going to give the plug since we're talking about it. My website, benmvp.com, you'll see the mini shops there. And I don't know when this is going to show, but I'll be scheduling the next winter series coming up soon. So
cool. Yeah.
That out.
This will launch with Epic React at the end of September. So
perfect.
People who are watching this as soon as it launched, will see that, and I'm sure that your mini shops are not going to be over in the winter too. So
yeah, that's the plan.
It's great stuff.
And really, like, I wrote this blog post. It was like the best way to learn React was totally, a clickbait title. But what it boils down to is that people do learn differently. Like some people learn short bursts, workshops, live workshops. Some people learn watching videos, self-paced. Like people learn in different ways. Some people learn reading tutorials and blog posts or books. Like that's how I learn best, actually. So it's great that we have all these different ways for people to learn. So just because you're doing epic React development, which is awesome and epic, right, doesn't mean that, that's it. Like no one else should do anything around learning because not everybody's learns the same way. So
yeah, absolutely.
it's like, yeah. So also it's like encouraging people to write blog posts about React as well, or to do a little video, even though the content already exists, because the way you present it, the medium that it's in is a way that somebody could learn. So
totally. I'm super in agreement with that. I think that the best, this is actually what I recommend as a learning pattern, is you consume information, then you go and build something, and then you teach the things that you learned when you built it, and that's how you learn.
Oh yeah. So definitely. Because there'll be times I'll be in a workshop and someone will say, oh, actually someone asked me this question. I was talking about use state and how it has a lazy initialization, right? So that you don't do something every time use state is called. And someone was like, could that be async? And I was like, I never really thought about that. I don't think so, but now I have to go and investigate and see. So I get opportunities to learn even more, even though I'm the instructor. People have all sorts of questions, and we can learn right there. Let's try it and see what happens. So
yeah. See, and it's one thing to try it and find out it like that doesn't work, but then it's another, because you're the teacher, you want to be able to explain why, and so then you have to dive in deeper, and that's the thing that you miss from just building stuff. Like if you just consume and then just build, then you find all the things that don't work, but you don't know why they don't work. You have to go and force yourself to teach it, because that puts you in the teacher's mindset of like, well, I need to be able to explain why this is the way it is.
Yeah, because someone's going to ask why.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, Ben, it's been awesome to chat with you. We talked about the tooling stuff you're doing, design systems, the teaching, mini shops and stuff. Is there anything else that we didn't talk about that you wanted to bring up?
Let's see. Yeah, that's basically it. I mean, we could talk more about the Houston Rockets instead of the Utah Jazz if you really want to, but
I wouldn't have anything useful to say.
Yeah, that's a lot of the things that I've been really interested in and really passionate about. So
very cool.
It's been a great chat as well.
Yeah. Hey, thanks so much, Ben, and we'll see you all. Oh, quick. What's the best way for people to follow you, to keep up with what you're working on?
Oh yeah, so Twitter is definitely the best place. So my Twitter account also @BenMVP. So you can find me there. I like to tweet out my blog posts, obviously mini shops that are happening, retweeting a lot of the things Kent says, all the different stuff that I found people talking about. I retweet, as well as basketball. So you have to at least be willing to accept seeing some tweets about non-coding things. So that's the best place. And then also my website, benmvp.com, is a great place to check out all the content that I am generating. So those two places.
Cool, man. Hey, thanks so much. It's always a pleasure. And good luck with the wildfires and all that stuff.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
See y'all later.
Bye, guys.